So what would happen to you if you got sick? Would you be able to take care of yourself? Is there somebody there that can take care of you? Or is there someone there that would take advantage of you? These are all concerns when it comes to the fear of ill health, but it's just the tip of the iceberg. When Napoleon Hill talked about the fear of ill health in his book, Think and Grow Rich, he went a little deeper than that. And he highlighted some serious concerns that people might think about on the surface, and it concerns them, it makes them afraid, causes them to live their life in a certain way, causes them to not do things that might be beneficial to them. But at the same time, they tend to ignore some of these things. They don't put plans in place. They don't get themselves ready for it. This is what we see happen often when someone fears something. You would think that they would do everything they could to protect themselves from that fear. But we see over and over again that people have a tendency to bring about what is called self-fulfilling prophecies. In other words, they're afraid of something, yet they do the very things that will allow what they're afraid of to take place, or they refuse to do the things to protect themselves if it does take place, or they just shut down entirely and allow that fear to overwhelm them and control their life. So, the fear of ill health. This is the third ghost of fear that Napoleon Hill talked about in his 6 ghosts of fear. Now, why does this fear exist? More than likely, it exists because man's mind has been implanted with these thoughts. These are terrible, terrible thoughts. Let's take a look at how Napoleon Hill put it. Napoleon Hill stated that this fear may be traced to both physical and social heredity. It is closely associated as to its origin with the causes of the fear of old age and the fear of death, because it leads one closely to the border of terrible worlds of which man knows not, but concerning which he has been taught some discomforting stories. The opinion is somewhat general, also, that certain unethical people engaged in the business of selling health have had not a little to do with keeping alive the fear of ill health. In the main, man fears ill health because of the terrible pictures which have been planted in his mind of what may happen if death should overtake him. He also fears it because of the economic toll which it may claim. So let's think about that for a second. He talks about a couple different things in that quote. One being both physical and social heredity. So one is the things that you may see in your ancestry, and two may be the things that you see in society, you're around you, or the smaller part of society in which you exist. Now he says it's closely associated in its origin with the fear of old age and the fear of death. What happens when we get older? Well, one, we tend to lose some of our physical prowess, some of that physical power. We're not as quick as we used to be. We're not as strong as we used to be. A lot of the things in terms of physicality that we placed value on fade away, right? In terms of not just strength, but say beauty. That's one of the things that women go through as they get older. They don't feel as beautiful. They don't look the same. Their skin's not as tight as it used to be. They may gain weight. Same thing happens to men, but it's viewed or looked upon as a bit different. But ultimately, as we get older, we tend to lose some of these things that we value, some of the things that we've identified as making us who we are. And then he talks about these terrible worlds, closely to the border of these terrible worlds, of which man knows not, but concerning which he has been taught some discomforting stories. What stories have you been taught about these discomforting worlds, these worlds that come about after we pass away? Again, we'll go deeper in this when we talk about death, but just to kind of scrape across that, we fear ill health because it gets us closer to death's doorstep. And we're not certain about what happens after that. We've been told some things, we've been fed some stories, none of which has any proof, but nevertheless, they scare us anyway. And Mr. Hill also talks about these people who have sold us health. What do we call that? Selling health. We used to call it snake oil salesman. That's what they called it back in the day. I remember being a kid and hearing people say that snake oil salesman. Right? They're peddling all these cures. What do you see around you now? For the most part, everybody's got an answer, right? And 9 times out of 10, that answer centers upon you not having to do a whole lot of work. Those are the ones that sell the best, where you can be lazy, you take this magic pill, and you stay healthy, and you don't have to do anything. Some of them are getting smarter now, and they're trying to mix that exercise, diet, and exercise thing in there as well. Um, but there are still a lot of people out there who sell health. They make their money off of selling health. And in order to sell that, they have to scare you, right? See, facts tell, stories sell. So they have to sell you to tell your story, right? To tell you a story about all these bad things that happen to you when you're unhealthy. Then you start thinking about it. Then you start painting these pictures in your head. And next thing you know, you're scared. And this fear is directing the way that you live your life. Now, it should be noted, I think this is a good time to point it out. You should respect your health, and you should be concerned. You should have a concern for your health. You should prioritize your health. But when you talk about the fear of ill health, it's just something different. It's a mindset thing. And the word fear in itself begins to move your mind towards that negative connotation. And once that happens, that negativity starts to take hold, you'll find that you start to get the results, opposite results of what you think or you say that you want. That fear is what does it. Now, again, it's important to respect and to be concerned, have a concern about these things. I remember I used to sell life insurance, right? And I tell you what, that was a tough gig. And the reason for that was sometimes people really don't think logically about their future and the future of their loved ones. They tend to think about the here and now and what they want at this moment in time. But anyhow, one of the things that I used to educate my clients on was that there was 3 things that could happen to you, right? One was that you could die soon, right? And in which case the need for life insurance is readily apparent. It's easy to see. You might die soon. Another thing that can happen to you is you might live a really, really long time. So that's when I would open their eyes to the investment options or the ability to invest inside of a life insurance policy, which is something that a lot of people didn't know you could do. And you could take advantage of the benefits of that, right? Leverage that to grow your wealth in a protected way. So I would explain that to them as well. And then the other thing that can happen, which a lot of people don't give a lot of thought to, is you could get sick. What happens if you get sick? All right, so you got to figure out what happens if you die soon. And you kind of got to figure out what happens if you live a long time. But what happens if you don't die, but you get sick and you stay sick for a long time? This is what I try to get people to think about and plan for, because that can eradicate your bank account and all the safety nets that people think they have. You got Medicaid and things of that, right? They have these little clauses in there to make you spend up all your own money first before they chip in. So a lot of people have it twisted and they think that the government is just going to come running to their aid when that's not the case. That there are private entities out there that are designed to suck every dime, every penny out of you. And in some cases, I hate to say it, but we find that people stay sick sometimes longer than they need to be. But that's a different topic. I won't go into that. But it can happen. So these concerns, being destitute, not having anything, not being able to take care of yourself, you can't even move around like you're supposed to, not having anyone there to take advantage or to take care of you, and even worse, somebody there who may take advantage of you. Some pretty scary stuff. Some pretty scary stuff. But that in and of itself is just the part that we see above the surface of the water. So this thing is like a big iceberg, right? So this is just above the water. Let's go down below the water and see what's down there. What's the main focus of this fear? I'll tell you what it is. It is the thought process that it creates. That is the main focus of this. What happens is it turns people into bad wizards. It's like I like to say, bad wizards, right? The bad magician. I believe that we're all magicians, so to speak, wizards, alchemists, right? We can create things, so we can manifest things out of thin air sometimes, right? It's pretty neat stuff, right? So if you look at it that way, you can kind of see how people come to that idea about the magic. It's really not magic. There's a science to it, but science and magic, aren't they kind of the same thing? But anyhow, these people begin to cast spells, right? And they begin to cast spells on themselves. It's pretty crazy if you think about it, but the negative thoughts that are generated by the fear become negative speech. And if you're anyone who believes in certain concepts, like let's get biblical here for a second. When God created the universe or everything, what he did was he spoke, he said, right? So that begins the engine of creation. We speak it. First we think it, then we speak it. That's casting the spell, right? We can go real deep in that if we wanted to, spelling and all. It gets pretty deep, but anyhow, we'll keep it above the water here. When they start to think this way and they begin to speak this way and they begin to cast these spells, they begin to draw these things to them, right? So these people who have a fear of ill health, have you ever dealt with somebody who there was just always something wrong with them? They're always sick. They're always ill. They're always in some type of pain, right? And if they weren't really in pain before they started speaking that, they end up that way. And they push off this energy. It's almost like this energy of death, this energy of ill health. They carry it with them. And you feel like you don't want to stay around them because they may make you sick. At least that's how I feel, right? I don't like to dwell in that negative energy. And that's one thing I learned along the way. Once I learned this, my life changed dramatically because I stopped saying things that spoke negativity into my own life. Right? Try this. If you do that, if you do speak negativity or negative energy into your life, try not doing that and see what happens. Watch how fast your life changes. Watch how quickly things begin to get better. You will literally feel better, physically feel better by just dropping the negativity. But there's some people who just cannot let it go. They just are constantly speaking these things. It's because they're afraid of that. So they talk about what they're afraid of, right? But Earl Nightingale said it best on his radio show. He said, "We become what we think about most of the time." And if we're thinking about being sick, we're thinking about being ill most of the time, that's exactly what we become. Sick, ill. So let's talk about some symptoms of the fear of ill health. How do we recognize this fear, right? We can see this fear operating in someone else's life, or we may be able to see the fear operating in our own life by paying attention to these 6 symptoms. Symptom number 1 is autosuggestion. This involves searching for the symptoms, imagining the symptoms, putting these thoughts in your mind, and this is how you make yourself sick. Autosuggestion. You're suggesting this stuff to yourself and then eventually suffering the consequences of doing that. Next is hypochondria. Hypochondria is just basically talking about something, talking about a sickness or an illness until you have a mental breakdown. So you're so afraid of a particular illness that you have a mental breakdown, and that's the illness that you suffer. Another symptom is not exercising. This one's kind of weird. But just imagine this: lack of exercise can actually make you more susceptible to illness, right? But imagine someone who is so afraid of getting hurt, injured, or becoming ill because they exercise that they don't exercise and then expose themselves to that danger. Sounds kind of weird, but again, it's not rational. Fear leads to irrational behavior. So, lack of exercise is another symptom of the fear of ill health. Another one is susceptibility. So, what is susceptibility? The fear of ill health breaks down nature's body resistance and creates a favorable condition for any form of disease one may contact. Basically, susceptibility is like opening the door for illness. It's this fear. It breaks down your natural body resistance, your natural body resistance, right? When you have fear, when you worry about things, it makes it easier for you to become sick. That's what susceptibility is. Another symptom you may notice in others or even in yourself is self-coddling. What is self-coddling? Self-coddling is when you have an adult, kids do it all the time, but you have an adult who is always searching for sympathy, right? They're looking for sympathy not only from others, but even from themselves, right? The self-coddling is what this is called. And you may notice it in people that you know. How many people do you know that are always looking for you to have some type of sympathy for them? Or do you yourself go around seeking sympathy as maybe a form of getting attention, but not just attention, specifically sympathy? And the last symptom of the fear of ill health that we talk about is intemperance. What is intemperance? Intemperance, in its most basic sense, is just excess. It's abusing substances, right? That is intemperance. We say that sometimes we want to make sure that things don't lead to excess or intemperance. This is when you lose your judgment as it pertains to moderation. You abuse that substance, and then you suffer the consequences of that, be they physical or mental. Sometimes it doesn't have an immediate effect on us physically, but it causes us to screw ourselves up mentally. That can be anything from extreme to getting into some serious trouble, or it could be something minor like missing out on opportunities and things of that nature, things that you should be doing, but you're not doing it because of the substance that you're abusing. So, recap: look for these symptoms in others that you're dealing with. When there's something bugging you and you can't figure out what it is, when there's something that's draining you when you're around somebody and you can't figure out exactly what it is, look for these symptoms, right? And also do a self-evaluation. Look for these symptoms in yourself and make sure that you're not the one who is the cause in this scenario. But recap: auto-suggestion, hypochondria, not exercising, susceptibility, self-coddling, and intemperance. So when you look at your life, where do you see the fear of ill health operating in your life, if at all? Maybe you don't really suffer from that fear in a major way, but even in a minor way, is there something that I discussed in this video that you can point out in your own life? Because if you can point it out, you can address it, right? That's what I do. If I can point something out, then I have a chance at addressing it. If not, then it may run rampant. But where's the fear of ill health operating in your life? Where's the fear of ill health operating in the lives of your loved ones? Where is the fear of ill health operating in the lives of people that you associate with? Because if it's in your circle, it's affecting you in one way, shape, or form. Remember, man is mind. Man is mind. I think, therefore I am. We become what we think about most of the time. Peace.